under the level of the screen.
Yes.
Hidden, like, you're not seeing what I'm doing.
Oh, but now they're hearing about it.
Oh, no.
This is what happens in live streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is the new streamingnetwork.com, WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio, TV, and podcast, #1 internet singles top network. And this is the #1 show, Let's Talk Dating with Christine and Barry. I just decided that. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Christine. Perfect choice.
Thank you. So today, last few weeks, we've talked about things in threes, about how they relate to each other. And so today we're going to have another 3. So we're going to talk about the difference between codependent versus independent versus interdependent. And we're really excited to dig into these because, it's interesting. I had a conversation the other day with my Monday night group about the difference between empathy and sympathy, and lots of them didn't know the difference. And I think some people might not know the difference between these 3 things too. So it'll be educational all around.
Oh, yeah. I have a little illustrative story for that one. So that's good to have on that one too. But definitely that speaks into this conversation. And since the other 3s we did, one about the way that men and women have different levels of expression, this is more about relationship conversations and about how people connect to each other in healthy and not so healthy ways.
So I have a visual and you said you have one. So my visual is, even if you're a whole person, which is what we suggest you be, you get to be a whole person before you get in a relationship. This is independent. You're 2 whole people. This is codependent. You're like so dependent, you just can't do anything without each other. And it's not generally often very helpful for one or both of the people. And if you think of a Venn diagram, interdependent is where you still have your whole parts. And then there's this third part that overlaps that I name the relationship part. And what do you think about that, Barry? And what's yours?
Well, speaking on this level of the codependency versus independence versus interdependent, I usually have one that is just codependent versus interdependent. But I'll throw one for independence as well, just to make it work for the 3 parts.
Good.
Because the thing is, a lot of people have this, and we'll talk more about the description of codependency and why people will think it's romantic. But the thing about codependency is oftentimes a relationship, people think that a loving relationship is like nose to nose, face to face, like almost two hands facing each other, like stuck together, which sounds like great, so close, so intimate, so wonderful. It's like, yeah, but the problem is, first of all, you can't see where you're going because you're blocked by the other person, which isn't a good thing. And secondly, you only see the other person. There's nothing else to be available. So how are you available to anything else in life? So that's not good. That's codependence. Independence is if you're basing a can't demands back to back, but if you imagine like that way back to back, it's like independence is you're simply not even seeing each other. There's no inclusion, there's no connection, there's nothing going on at all. Which is what isn't, because independence is not a relationship, it's 2 different people. But interdependence is where it's 2 whole people, but not stuck face to face, but side by side, facing the same direction. And that meaning that they are connected and additive, but they're independent whole people together. I should say they're whole people together, because they're not independent necessarily. But the interdependence piece is that they are able to live their lives independently of each other, but not exclusive of each other. They're exclusive to each other.
I like that very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
I always think about, sorry, go ahead.
Well, so the illustration I had was about the empathy versus sympathy thing, but we'll get to that later on, just to plant the seed.
That there's space. You have space in your relationship. You have space to explore your own ideas and your own thoughts, and you bring it back to the relationship. And then it's even better when you talk about it, because then the other person gets to give their input and their thoughts, and that you work together to make a greater goal together. You work together in a partnership. That's really interdependence. And boy, it'd be nice if not even just in romantic relationships, in business and friendships, it could be more of that. But I like that you talk about how romantic people think codependent is, and I think it's portrayed a lot in romantic movies, the real serious rom-coms, that you cannot live without the other person. You just cannot stand up. And as devastating it is to become a widow, I am living without him, sadly, but okay, that I wasn't completely not a person, that even in the worst tragedy that happens, I'm still an okay person. I'm still standing. I've got lots of great support and people in my life. And I watch how the real codependent people who their lives truly mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually depended all the time on the other person, that if someone dies, which just will happen to one of you probably as we age, that what are you going to do with yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you keep yourself a whole person while still in this, hopefully, interdependent relationship? And I think conversely, the people who are so independent are so afraid because they see this example of codependency that they think, I don't want that. I don't want to, I gave up my life. Would I have to give up my life? Do I have to give up all my independence? Where you don't in an interdependent relationship. And so I think talking about a lot of the myths before we get to this is how you do it and don't do it, because lots of people, as I said, don't have good definitions. They don't really understand the difference.
Well, I'm going to throw one more layer on top of this because something I thought about before. I sort of correlated this three-part thing with the attachment styles. But basically looking at it, because if you look at it from that point of view, anxious attachment style is basically codependent. Avoidant attachment style is independent, and secure attachment style is interdependent, really. I mean, it's very simplistic in a sense, but it does correlate a lot of levels where basically codependent is that neediness, that having to be connected, that kind of without you type thing, the Jerry Maguire quote, you complete me. And the Harry Nilsson song, I'll die with living you without you, sort of thing. All the love songs, frankly, for the last 70 years, well, the majority of them were basically codependent songs because they imply that you are not whole without the other person. That's codependency. The independent piece is avoidant, means there's no desire for connections, just live my life the way I want. And there are people who are in a relationship independently, but it's almost like they're it's almost like friends with benefits in a sense. It's like they're doing their own lives and occasionally they get to play together, that sort of level. But otherwise they're away from each other. Then interdependent is where it's both partners are secure in themselves and the other person's additive to that. And again, we're getting into more detail about how that works, but just to overlay those three attachment styles on top of it gives another perspective on how to see that.
Threes work out really well when you want to compare things, because often two leads to such extremes without any opportunity to, well, what's the middle? What's the combination? What's a happy medium? An idiom from our language. So thinking about how you were raised, certainly attachment style lends to that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about when you were raised? Did you feel about it an independent person? Did you feel like, I mean, you're dependent on your family for food and clothes, but your personage, who you are as a person, people often don't think about that as they're growing up, or even when they're adults, about how it was when they grew up. And when you see what kind of relationships you've had, friendships, loves, business, it often reflects how you were raised. And so hopefully this is going to help you see, oh yeah, that's how I was raised. So of course, those are the kind of relationships I've sought out, or I've said, I don't want that. So then I only think I have the opposite. If I was my helicopter parents, I became uber independent, or my parents left me alone. So now I want somebody I can cling to. We think in our minds, especially when we stay in our young mind, that there's only these extreme options. And we're here to tell you there's a third one that's really good.
Yeah, actually, the funny thing is when you said that about helicopter versus leaving you alone, I actually put it the other way around, because for me, helicopter parents, for oftentimes for kids, means that they almost have to feel enmeshed to feel connected, which is the codependent style. Whereas they leave them alone to do their own thing, they may grow up being very independent. So they might find themselves as an adult choosing relationships from that perspective as well. So it's funny how it can work either way in a sense, which is kind of cool to understand that it's not based necessarily on one way only.
Really good point. And what I tell people is often when we look back, we either went along with what our parents did because it felt familiar and it was easy and we didn't see any other options, or we went, oh yeah, no. I mean, the other kids would say, I'm never raising my kids like you did, or I'm not going to ever act like you did, who now go to the opposite extreme. So exactly. I tell people we're either because of or in spite of how we were raised. And it's often a very firm, unconscious choice that you might still be okay with it, but bring it forward and say, consciously, am I happy to choose this? Is it working in my life? Then keep it up. If it's not working in your life, then look, we have other options available. The other day I was at 3 different times during the day, it came up that I said, oh, you don't know there's other pages to the menu. You think there's only this page. Most restaurants have way more pages to their menu. That's why I used that. And so you think this is the only choice you have because that's all you were ever shown. I want you to see there's other, you don't have to choose a bunch of things, but look how many things you could choose and see how it lands with you. See if it feels like you might want to move a little bit in a different direction. And boy, this is such a key place to how our lives can feel better or worse. I think it's really pivotal, don't you think?
It is so key because we don't always recognize that we have dominion over that. We can choose how we want to respond and choose how we want to live.
Yeah.
And hopefully, frankly, with all the tons of episodes we've shared over the last 4 years, there's enough content in there to help you transform your life. And this is another episode that will hopefully help you do the same thing.
Yeah. So we'll start out with the first word of being codependent.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about how dependent you are on for your happiness, your well-being, your sense of self, your sense of importance. That I'm just going to say 50% at this point. More than 50% is dependent on this outside source.
Yeah.
Generally in our lives, it'd be good to have it maybe be a little less, but if you could even keep it at 50%, because most people that are codependent, it's 80 or 90%. So think about how much do you care about other people's opinions? How much do you care what other people say to you? And do you know if it's the truth about you or not? Do you just take it personally? Do you rethink it? Because most codependent people are very susceptible. It was so me when I was growing up. I would constantly be looking and asking and sensing what everybody thought about me and trying to adjust to 12 different people at the same time to figure out how I could not piss anybody off or have them like me or at least see me or not see me it was exhausting when I look back. I can see why I ended up a very anxious child.
That's the thing is that we don't realize how much of a way of living we grow into because of the way we're treated by people around us, not just necessarily our parents, but other kids. And definitely the experience of having other people's perceptions hit us like straight to the heart. So we feel it. There's definitely a part of us where we are in a place where we're looking at how we have to contort ourselves to be approved of by other people. And it's funny, I'm actually running new articles. I've been writing so many articles lately, but it's getting out of hand. But I've got another article I'm working on about self-approval, because it is so much about our way of living that we're not trained or actually not educated to think that it's okay to approve of ourselves, that we must seek other people's approval to be validated, to feel worthwhile, which is absolutely what the codependent cycle is based on. So in a relationship, to bring it home to that level, oftentimes in codependency, we do things to make sure the other person will like us, or in fact love us, because that's what we're after. And so we don't necessarily do things that are honest and real because we're afraid they won't like us anymore or love us anymore. And that's the codependent trap we fall into.
Yeah. Sadly, what I realized through lots of therapy and into my 30s for sure, was my goal a lot of the time was to make people like me that I didn't even like. I didn't even like them. I didn't like being around them, but I couldn't have anybody that didn't like me, because then my value went down on the Dow, as I was thinking, the stock market. It was sad. And I had no idea that's what I was doing until a therapist pointed out. I went, oh my God, that so rings true to me. And I couldn't have heard it when I was young at all.
No.
But that really hit home, because I'm like, that's a lot of energy for people who I don't even like.
It was something that came up for me in a journey I was on back in the 80s when I was like younger. Talking about basically realizing how angry I was and upset I was about other people, because it wasn't about them being wrong. It's about the fact I was so caught up in their way of thinking. And it wasn't even what they were thinking, it's what I believed they were thinking, which made it even more confusing. And that's the trap. Again, that codependent trap isn't something we choose necessarily consciously. It's how we just fall into, because that's the default way of behaving. And it does become, the word I often use is enmeshed, because we're so in that mess of what other people think. And so we respond accordingly. And so when we get denied or said no to, we take it personally, which makes sense in a way, but also doesn't serve us, because other people's opinions really doesn't affect us. I talked about this before about rejection. I think it was an episode a long time ago. We talked about this, about how the reality of rejection is really interesting, because we take it personally, we get upset by it, we don't feel happy about rejection. But what rejection really is you didn't get what you didn't already have. That's the reality of rejection. So what is there to be upset about? The reality is, the only reason you feel upset about rejection is because you assumed you would get it. You assumed you would have it, or you wanted it so much that when you got it, you didn't get it. You feel upset by that, and that's the game we play with ourselves. And I'm making light of it. But rejection, and I'm talking about at the beginning, not so about if you're in a relationship then you get rejected. That's a different story. But this idea of, when you go, for men especially, going out and asking a woman out the first time and she says no, we do a lot with rejection. And the thing is, if you take it personally, that's when we're falling into codependency, because there's a part of us, either one, that is feeling codependent, that we're missing out what we should have, or two, is about to approval early on, we're being disapproved of. Like we're not good enough, we're not acceptable enough, something wrong with us, which is all this stuff that can be really good grist for the mill if we decide to work with it, or it becomes a hammer we beat ourselves up with.
And a lot of us were taught that as kids by parents who didn't know any better, and their parents didn't know any better. No. Yeah, one of my very favorite sayings was Eleanor Roosevelt said, "What other people think of me is really none of my business." I was like, oh, I really worked at owning it. It really took work to own that, since I was the kind that wanted people that didn't like me to like me, or that I didn't like to like me. To really get to the place where I was so free. And I love that you said that we would guess, because I would guess. It wasn't even all, there were facts sometimes. Somebody was blatantly mean to me. But sometimes, there'd just be a look. Like I was telling somebody the other day, I said, this smiley face, that's a lot of the time when I am thinking about something really hard, everybody thinks I'm mad because I go. So now I've learned to say I'm thinking. Because if it's something that somebody hasn't asked me, which I love, that I have to really think about what the answer would be, I can't just blah it out that I've said it 100 times. I know I make this face. And so now I just go, I'm thinking. And they look at me and I go, I'm still thinking. Don't talk to me. I can't think and talk. But I have this, my mouth goes down, and I do. And so I think of all the times I misunderstood other people because of a look or a gesture that most of the time had nothing to do with me, because I was so busy taking everybody's temperature and trying to use my spidey sense and my beaming from my submarine. I'm sure I guessed often so many times wrong.
Right.
And that's really such a codependent trait. It really is.
It's dangerous. I think probably everyone's guilty of it to some degree or others, because we're not raised usually by family members who are conscious enough to realize that behavior isn't helpful. It becomes detrimental because we buy into that game, and the comparison addiction that many of us fall victim to is part of that, is that we come up short against other people because we can always find reasons to justify why somebody's better than we are, and we end up being in a place where we can't have, or we don't want, or we feel less than, and we feel so distressed by that. We start feeling like we've missed out, we've lost out, we feel again, and then we reject ourselves. So it gets really messy.
Yeah, it's been startling the very few times in my life when I've actually really met people that were so secure and such a wonder. I was like, how did that happen? I want to know, give me the formula. I want to know the written out chemical formula of how that happened in your family and your way of being born. It was just fascinating because it was so glaring to me, because it was so opposite of especially who I was then. So the other thing that's interesting is often we think, well, okay, I don't want to be that codependent person. I have these people around, they're so needy. Oh my God, they're so needy, and they just need all the stuff all the time. I am just going to step back here and do everything by myself and for myself, and I don't need anybody. And, I won't even ask for help. And that is exhausting too, but in a whole different way. Before, I was using all my energy, because I had to do that too. I had to use all my energy to try to figure out how to not upset everybody. And this was like, I'm not sure I care a lot, and I'm going to just figure out how to do this on my own. It was a whole different exhausting. But you know how we have to do these extremes before we find wherever our middle is, huh?
It is kind of the pendulum swinging. We go from one side to the other before we find the center again. It's almost like we've got to define ourselves from that extreme. It's true, yeah. And I'm so aware of the paradigm of basically we do go from that extreme of being so tired and worn out from being needy and wanting to have what we want, not getting it. We say, that's it, I'm going to be on my own, I'll be fine. And then go all the other way extreme where I'm going to be totally independent and ignore everybody else. Neither one of them's fun. Neither one of them works, which is why we're talking about interdependence as one of these things too. But we're going to take a break in a moment. Just want to summarize. So the codependent side and the independent side have their uses, but generally are not very beneficial. We're going to talk about interdependence, which is the ideal goal or result after these messages, because frankly, this is the juicy stuff, the good stuff. So we'll see you here in a minute.
Okay. Hi, we're back with Let's Talk Dating with Christine and Barry. And today we're talking about codependence, independence, and interdependence. And we've talked a lot about codependence, and we've talked some about the independent swing the whole other direction. And now we're going to get into the juicy of what's in the middle of all that.
Well, actually, one thing before we do that, because I mentioned right at the beginning, you were talking about sympathy versus empathy.
Oh, yes.
The visual I've used, just so people get a feeling for this one, because I've used that a lot in my conversation, because people think that sympathy is more important or better than empathy. But the reality is, the way to define sympathy different from empathy is that empathy is you see someone who's fallen down a hole, and you grab a rope and you lower it down and help them climb out. That sounds wonderful. Sympathy is you find someone who's fallen down a hole, you grab a rope and you throw it down in there and you jump in there with them.
Empathy.
Sympathy means that nothing changes. You just give them a comfort in the pain that they're in.
Yeah.
Occasionally that works, but rarely it doesn't. Empathy is you really do hold the space for them, but then you help them climb out of the state they're in.
Yeah.
And that's a shift from codependency to interdependence, because you're involved with them, but you're not attached to the way they're doing things, and you can be free. So that felt like a good introduction to this part of the conversation.
Yes. And the attachment is such a good point, Barry, because we do. Well, I'm now giving you help and you need to do it my way. And why aren't you doing it my way? And why aren't you faster? And why doesn't it look like what I thought it was going to look like? Yeah, that's very much about sympathy, very much. And the empathy is like, I know you can do it and I'm here to support you. And wow, you want to bounce ideas off of me, or you want some feedback, and I'm going to sit with you going, yeah, sucks. It sucks. First, you got to sit back. It sucks. Whatever it is, it sucks. And you're like, what are you going to do about it? I know you're going to figure this out. And I'm happy to sit here with you and walk with you and have conversations with you. And if you need feedback, but I'm over here watching you and cheering you on. Yeah, boy. And people love it when it's given to them when they're ready. But if they're interested in being codependent, if both people or one person is, then sympathy is the only way to go for them, because they don't want you to just know that, well, no, I can't do anything. Then you can't even play the empathy card. You can show them and see if they might be interested later.
Absolutely. And it is, yeah. I mean, because again, society teaches ways we should be or do certain things a certain way. And yes, there's a part of us like we want to be kind, we want to be compassionate, we want to help other people out. But when we enable them to be that weak, or we take care of things so much they don't know what to do themselves. One of the biggest things, I mean, I've always analogies dropping in there, but if you know the idea about the cocoon with the butterfly, that's another one of these things that we talk about as analogies. Is this thing with the butterfly is, there was a story about how a father and son were watching this butterfly trying to emerge from a cocoon after it totally, when his caterpillar totally disintegrated, then came back as a butterfly. And the butterfly was stuck coming out of the cocoon. And the kid was about to reach out to try and crack it open. And the father said, don't do that. And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, because if we cut open the cocoon, help the butterfly out to free it, unfortunately, the butterfly will never fly. The kid was like, how is that so? It's because the thing is, when the butterfly is coming out of the cocoon, all that stress, all that pushing is pumping blood into its wings. When it does finally break free from the cocoon, its wings will inflate and it'll be able to fly. So by helping the butterfly, we stop it from being a butterfly. So when we encourage it and hold space for it, that's when it can thrive. And in some ways, being interdependent is that level of detachment, but high involvement and high support of what's happening. And so recognizing that when we're in an interdependent relationship, it's about really honoring and supporting each other, but not doing it for the other person, except on special occasion type thing when you want to help them out, sort of thing. But generally speaking, it's walking side by side, not, disabling them by doing it for them.
Yes. You're independently living your lives interdependently.
In a way, yeah.
And I love using the chicken, because there's a mother hen right there. She does not help. She knows instinctually that baby has to get out of that shell itself. The only thing I learned you could do is if there's loose shells, you can move that around, but you can't touch the shell that the baby's in, because it's building up their strength. It's exercising their lungs. It's exercising their beak, their wings, their legs, because they have to get up and walk right away. Right away. So they have to have all this working by the time they're out of the shell, because otherwise they're not going to get fed and they're not going to survive. They won't thrive. So I love the butterfly analogy, and I love adding the chicken, because typically there's not a lot of people nobody's the mother caterpillar. There's nobody helping it generally.
Right.
But there's a chicken, and I said, why doesn't she just help? And it was the very same. And I learned it when I was a preteen, because I went to a 4-H thing with a cousin, and I was like, oh, that's really good to know. Maybe that might help for human beings.
Yep. So yeah, it's a key thing.
So learning your own strengths, building up your own strengths, certainly before you get in a relationship. And then you find out, well, these are the things I have to offer, and what are the things that you're offering, and how do they play well together? How do they yin and yang? How do each our strengths and our weaknesses play well together, that we help somebody that our strength is different, and we can then encourage them, and or be there to do this thing. Like I'd say, everybody, I would, if I had to do more than just talk to all of you and share a few things on social media, it would not be happening, because I don't know how to do any of that stuff. But it feels very interdependent, because we all have our part. You all don't do my part, and I don't do your part. And we all put this together, and it poofs out to the world, and all these hundreds and thousands of people are watching it. So that's one of my examples I've given people lately, that I don't even have to learn how to do that part. And I can still be very interdependent in this relationship we have with our podcast. I'm not codependent, and I'm not fully independent. I am very interdependent with this whole arrangement.
Yep. Same here. Yeah. And so getting back to the relationship conversation for a second, since people are probably watching for that reason.
You think?
The interdependent piece is almost like you are, in fact, being part of a team, that you and your partner are a 2-person team that you face the world together. So each of you has your own strengths, but also each of you has your own areas where you let the other partner do those things, so that's where they're stronger. And that's the thing about knowing that each other has the strength you bring to it. So it's not like you're disabling the other person by doing it for them, or enabling the person by making them do it for you. You're just being clearly understanding of what your strengths are, what their strengths are, and you play to those strengths for each other. And then you honor and support each other's strengths. And it's that level of encouragement and that level of growth that makes that relationship healthier and more advanced. And that's where a true relationship can thrive. And that's what I personally think about being one of those myself.
And it's the purpose of the dating part. Because as you're in the dating part, you talk about, this is the things I really like to do, and these are the things I'm really good at. And tell me the things that you're really good at. And then I'll tell you the things I'm not so good at. And it's really helpful if somebody else knows how to do that. And they'll tell me the things that you're not so good at, that you need help. And it's not that you each make up for the thing that the other person's not good at. I mean, there's things that I didn't know how to do plumbing, and neither did my husband, but he was really good at hiring plumbers. So, but we would make the decision together, and a nice plumber would show up and he changed our toilet, and we were all happy that he did that. So, and our decision was made as a team. Our decision was made because we both went, do you know how to do this? Do you want it? No. Okay. We'll have somebody else do it. So that's the other piece of what you were saying, is that you find out where you can make this relationship, this place where we overlap, stronger because of what you each individually bring. And part of what you each individually bring, I'm so happy for you to do this, and I'm grateful that I don't, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it because you're much better at it than me. That's the other part. That's really a very graceful way to do this. Because often we want to tell the other person how to do it, even if we're not good at it.
Oh, that's a whole nother conversation.
I don't.
So,
I had to call it out because I was one of those for a while, long time ago.
I received that a few times in past relationships, so I know that one as well from the painful side. That wasn't interdependent; that was definitely codependent.
Sure.
This was about control and about other things too. But anyway, we're not going in that direction. We're talking about independence and codependence and interdependence here.
Yeah.
It's like brings up other memories to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So in this context, the interdependent piece, I want to say it again, is so important to recognize that, first of all, and we talked about this in other episodes, is that individually we are all whole and complete when we remember to be so. It's not something we have to go find or seek. We're naturally whole and complete. And we think sometimes in relationship, we're coming in that lacking place to find something that's going to fill us up, which is that codependent way of doing things, as I mentioned earlier, which is why, again, that Jerry Maguire quote, "You complete me," is so inaccurate and it's not romantic. So stop thinking about it. It is. But the interdependent players in this, the level of playing it is that because you're whole and complete already, and so is the other person, if you remember to treat them that way, key lesson, by the way, you don't think about them being weak or disabled or anything else. So you think about them being whole and complete themselves. And hopefully they do the same thing for you. That's what you want. Then your relationship becomes where you can say, how can we give to each other from the overflow? I was talking about this with a client yesterday about true growth in a relationship is where you become so able to take care of yourself and love yourself and honor yourself that you give from the overflow to your partner. And that's an easy way to give because you're not stressing out yourself or draining yourself to do it. Because codependently, it generally is kind of a draining experience. Interdependently is a much healthier place because you don't rely on the other person to make you feel okay. Yes, they will add to that value. Great. And they will love you as well. But you don't need that. And this is the joy of interdependence, is all this stuff is gravy, it's bonus, it's joy to celebrate each other on top of what you already have.
It's the best.
Yes.
So another layer of the interdependent is being really honest about who you've been in the past and how it really felt and why it served you. Because as human beings, we do not keep doing stuff that there isn't a benefit. I mean, I say it all the time, what's the benefit? Ever goes, there's nothing. Well, we don't do it without there being a benefit. And the benefit might be it's good to feel bad. It's an interesting thing to discover. You're used to feeling bad. You don't feel good enough to not feel bad. It's familiar, or that doing something different that might feel good feels really scary because what if it doesn't turn out? What if it doesn't last? So getting really clear about what are the pieces inside of you that will help build up this part of you that would allow you to be interdependent with another person. Because the more I found I could accept myself, the more I could allow somebody else to accept those parts of me. And it gave me more opening to accept them, because I found that when I wasn't accepting parts of me, I wasn't as open to accept other parts of other people that I really wanted and really was looking for. And there was no way in. It's like the faucet was turned off for me to feel it for me. So then there was no way there was no opening. That was a fascinating discovery. And that the only way for me to learn how to be interdependent was to go, oh, if I accept this in me, I'm going to be much more open to accept it in another person.
Yeah.
That was shocking.
This is one of the gifts of being in an independent relationship, is that both partners are working on themselves, so that we each have our own homework, so to speak, but also when we are able to heal this past piece of wounds or baggage or anything else, and we become free to be comfortable in our skin and we love who we are, then we become a better partner, which is a side effect. But we don't do it to become a better partner. We do it for ourselves. And the side effect is we're also a better partner. And that makes the joy of relationships so much more fun, because when you play at that level and you meet people at that level, relationship takes on a whole new level of experience and joy and celebration, because it's a lot less stress. And also when you do discover, oh, I didn't work on that part, your partner will hold you in a loving place to work on that part, so to speak.
Boy, is that an amazing place to come from.
Yes.
Because what I've discovered, and for me personally, when I married my late husband, and what I talk to clients about it all the time, is you work on yourself, you get really whole, you go through this dating process, you get really clear as much as you can about who the other person is and who you are in this relationship together. And then some old stuff that finally goes, oh, I can get healed. I'm going to show up now. And we're like, oh,
yeah.
Is it the relationship? Is it them? Is it me? I mean, we want to label it bad. And it's really not, because what I found was in the container that we had created, when that kind of stuff came up, it was hard and we worked through it. And then it was even better. Oh, when it comes up, you're like, crap, it's one of those things. But it can't, those kinds of things I really learned, you can't work on it by yourself, because it's a relationship thing that came about in some relationship in your life, whoever that was. And now you need to work it out in a relationship. Oh, that was an eye opener.
Well, the thing is that, and this is the pit that you have to switch language in a way, is to realize that this is an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
When something shows up, it's like, oh crap, something showed up. It's like, oh, opportunity to work on something. You know, I mean, if you can shift it that easily, great. But I'm not talking about it being that easy. But if you can shift that focus inside yourself to recognize that your partner is there holding space and they're not judging you for what's going on, first of all.
Yeah.
But secondly, recognize that what you're working on, something that's come up to be healed because you're ready to do the work now. That's an opportunity for transformation. That's an opportunity for wholeness. That's an opportunity to really discover how much love there is between the two of you, because they get what you're working on is important for both of you and them.
Yeah.
And then they watch and hold space for you. Maybe you go see a therapist or your coach, or do it with them. But ultimately, you become free, and they get to enjoy you in a different place.
I got really good at that after the fact. I really worked at getting good at it after the fact, going, oh, that's why it did that. Oh, there's the good part of it.
Right.
Eventually, I got better, not perfect. Sometimes in the middle, I'd forget it's the middle. And then I'd remember it was the middle and go, oh, right, it's the middle. Oh, yeah, it's this middle part again.
Right.
I have a girlfriend who used to have this visual about, she says, you know, you're on this trapeze, because she did the thing where you go take lessons and you go let go and the catcher catches you. She said, but you're there with the two bars and you're like, let go of one, go back to the old or go to the new, but you're flying in the middle with nothing. So the middle, I for a long time I did it. I didn't have to like the middle. I decided I didn't have to like it. And then eventually I go, all right, it's the middle. I'd get there faster. So it's nice because then my clients get to hear about it's the middle sooner, because I know it now. Yes, it's gracious if you can, if the other person reminds you, oh, it's the middle. We're not falling apart. Nothing horrible's happening.
Right.
It's just, oh, it's a healing opportunity. Really? I don't know that I want to hear that.
The term I got called once by one of my coaches when I was working in process was they called it being liminal space, which is the in-between space. And it is that sense of being between one state and another state. And it is at times, the first time it happened consciously, it was really disconcerting, because suddenly I felt like I was just, like paddling for trying to stay above, stay afloat. I didn't know how to. But when I recognized that, in fact, liminal space is a gracious time. In fact, I've now related, for me, liminal space with grace for me, because a liminal space is, it's almost like it's a place where no decision has to be made, because you're in between something you've left and something you're going toward, and there's no action to take at this moment. It's not necessarily a long period of time, but it's just that moment where you're just in between and you can simply rest there. And what's just interesting is it's an unusual state to be in, which makes it fun to play with. And so there's a grace for me, there's a sense of grace about it, because I recognize that where I'm going to get to, I'm already heading towards anyway, because I left the other place behind as I was moving towards it. So all I'm really doing in a way is enjoy the ride. And yes, there's things to do along the way, of course, but make that experience more positive, more joyful is a graceful way and a better way of journeying through that process from the old to the new.
You have such an eloquent way to put it. My friend Sandy, the one with the trapeze bar, says, just lift up your feet and your hands like you're on a roller coaster and go for the ride.
That works too.
So she wasn't quite as eloquent as you, but it's the same point.
We're all different.
Yeah. But what's fun is different people listen to this and different people relate to say, oh, that's me. Oh, right. Yeah, that middle. Oh, the fear of change, the uncomfortable of change, the uncomfortable of not knowing what's happening next. And to hear, we hope that you really hear as we're going through this, it's really worth it. It is so worth it. And I'm going to quote Dr. Laura again and say, between now and dead, how do you want to live? And this is a really great goal, to work on being an interdependent person first, and then finding another person that wants to be interdependent and to be in a relationship with them. Oh, yeah. It's the best. It's the best. And you just have to take it on our faith and word until you've experienced it. It's really worth the work, though, and the journey and the knowledge and the goal. It's really worth the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, for me, one of the most satisfying parts of the work I do with the clients is to receive them transformed to this place where they understand that they are whole and they can actually have a relationship that's whole as well. And it's, especially from when I look back to where we started from to where we got to, is the sense of just going, oh, now they get what the power and the joy of this is about. It's like, my work is done.
Isn't that one of the best parts of our job? Because I know as human beings, it's really important to keep thinking about where you want to be and go and your next new goal. And we forget personally to stop. Look how far you've come.
Yeah.
Really. It was a lot of work and a lot of soul searching, and we need to celebrate that. And it's one of the things that you and I do all the time with our clients, because I don't think people are very good about doing it for themselves. And it's a joy to go, wait, stop. We need to, I take periodic times, as you do, to say, we're going to do the next thing. Let's just look. And they really go, because you kind of forget. You want to kind of forget what it was like before. And I don't want you to go back and live it ever, but I want you to go look at the progress, which also gives you incentive. Well, if I've done that, look what the next thing I can do. I mean, it's really helpful.
Yeah. And that's the thing is the more people who get this, the easier it gets for everybody, ultimately. So yes, we are on a mission here individually to do this and help shift people forward. Hopefully there's going to be a greater population of people who do get it and understand it and live it, which is really the work. So that's why we do this.
For sure. Absolutely guaranteed. And everybody that learns this then gets to share it with the next level of people who get to say, no, thank you, not right now. Or, wow, I never thought about that. Tell me more. Or, I am so ready. Yeah, bring it on. I'm ready to do the work. And you don't even know necessarily that there's this to do until somebody brings it up. So that's why we tell you, and you hopefully tell other people, and share our podcasts with them and share our words. And people say, oh, they quote us all the time. And isn't that so flattering?
It's very cool. And just to put another level for a second, just as wrapping up, one of the things that we bring as coaches, as guides, facilitate how you would describe us, is we are interdependent with our clients. Mm-hmm. We're not independent because we're not in a place we don't care about anything. We're also not codependent where we have to make sure they stay where they are. With our clients, our job is to really facilitate their process to the next level. So in a way, our role is to demonstrate that behavior with our clients as well. So it's an interesting, like more than one thing happening at once, if you go watching through levels. So it's a great gift that we get to bring because we've done the work, and not saying we're expert, but we know pretty well how to do this, and we help you become better at it too. So everybody wins. So
eloquent, Barry. So if you'd like to go on that journey with one of us, the way to get a hold of me is to go to my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com. And you can schedule a complimentary conversation with me if you scroll down to what's holding you back from love questionnaire. There's just 10 brief questions that talk about where you are and maybe where you'd like to go. And then you'll have access to my calendar to schedule that complimentary conversation. You can also join my mailing list, which will give you repeats of the podcasts and links to all the past ones. We're almost at 200. It's very exciting.
Amazing.
I know. And then you can also go to all my social media, which is at the bottom of that homepage. And you can click on Facebook and LinkedIn and Pinterest and YouTube and Instagram and Twitter, or whatever the heck it's X called now. You can also send me a personal private email at Christine@theperfectcatch.com and tell people how they may reach you, Barry.
Similarly to Christine, I have a website, an email, all sorts of things. So if you want to reach out to me, go to my website, which is barryselby.com. And on that page at the top of the screen, there's a link to have a conversation saying, let's chat. When you click on that, you'll be taken to a similar thing where you actually get to my calendar and also fill out a form that will then have you answer some questions so I know better what you're looking for or where you are and where you want to go, because it helps me to give me a head start to work with you. Also on the website, at the bottom of the homepage, there's a link to join my email list where you can get my replays of the shows as well, plus other things I'm working on. And also on my site, if you click on the menu, there's a bunch of things you can navigate to, including my book, online courses, coaching, and other things as well. Social media wise, yes, there are links at the bottom of my screen, but basically if you want to find me on social media, my name is Barry Selby, which again, my site is barryselby.com. All my social media is Barry Selby, except for 2, which I'll get to. So go to find me on YouTube, on Facebook, On LinkedIn, on Twitter /X, and Pinterest, it's all Barry Selby. However, on Instagram and on Threads, because they're the same thing basically, is under the real Barry Selby. And if you want to send me an email, you drop me one at barry@barryselby.com and send me any questions, thoughts, or if you want to do more deeper work, let's talk.
Okay. And your quiz.
Thank you. I forgot my quiz. So also on my homepage, which you can get to, or if you go to barryselby.com/quiz, but in the middle of the screen is a link to the quiz that takes you to the Relationship Readiness Assessment quiz, which is a quiz I created to help you navigate where you are and maybe where you are not yet at the level you want to be at. So it's a self-evaluation, basically. You go through the quiz, and if you have any questions after that, there's an invitation to have another conversation with me, and it will give you some clarity and guidance as well. So take the quiz. Even if you don't work with me, you'll give you some clarity, which will help you as well.
It's a great quiz. And we are always here at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern live, and we'd be happy to have you ask us a question or make a comment while we're chatting. You can also go to our YouTube channels and share them with other people that you think might be interested in this subject or any of the subjects of our almost 200 YouTube podcasts. And you can also like them and subscribe. We'd love for you to subscribe. It would be perfect. And then you can also take us with you, huh, Barry?
Absolutely. And by the way, that 1 p.m. is every Thursday, not every day, just to be clear.
Did I say every day? I think I want to do it every day.
I know, he didn't say every day. He just said 1 o'clock. He didn't say every day, though, but it's like he said that it's Thursday, just to be clear.
Good.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, yes. And so the audio version of this show goes out on podcasts. Usually they get batched together every month or so. So you may be a couple behind if you're listening to the audio versus watching the videos on YouTube, whatever. But if you listen to them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts platform, all the different podcast platforms you can go to, you can take them with you. It's easier when you're riding, driving, shopping, hiking, going to the gym, whatever you're doing, to listen in your earbuds versus trying to watch something on the screen. So definitely the podcast version works better for a lot of people. So listen and tune in, and definitely subscribe to our channels and listen to us and share with your friends too, because some people may need to hear what you've already heard and go, you know what, my friend needs to hear this as well. So share them with people.
We love being shared. We're happy. Yes. We learned sharing in school. So as Barry pointed out, we will be back next Thursday at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern. We hope that you'll tune in to another interesting conversation about dating and relationships on Let's Talk Dating.
Indeed. We look forward to seeing you then.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.